Hello and welcome to another episode of the Character Podcast, where today's guest is Gregg Stevenson MBE. Gregg is a military veteran, double amputee, and Paralympic gold medalist. His story, naturally, just off that brief description, is a fascinating one. Gregg's journey is one of courage, resilience and leadership, from his service in the military to his work inspiring change across communities and beyond. Of late, Gregg has worked as a mental health ambassador for the NHS, as well as supporting charities across the country. Get ready and let's dive in. Gregg, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
How's things?
Pleasure to be here. Yeah, very well, thank you. Yeah, absolute pleasure to be here.
Great stuff. We'll come to the end of the summer. How's summer been? You been away?
So, summer's been epic. It's the first summer I've had for a lot of years. I've not been rowing a boat. So I've been, absolutely obsessed with getting out with the kids.
Are you missing it? Are you missing the
I do miss it. Especially the summertime, because rowing in the summer is bliss. You know, the lakes, the Alps, getting out in Europe and racing. Yeah. That's the fun bit of rowing. You know, what people don't see is the hard yards in the winter.
The 5 o'clock starts. in
the
cold
dark,
mornings.
Head torch on.
Exactly that.
Yeah. Great summer, thank you.
Good stuff, and thanks so much for coming on. For those viewers and listeners that don't know much about Gregg's story, it's genuinely fascinating. It's an unbelievable story of I suppose, quite ultimate highs and lows, from gold medals to huge catastrophic incident that ended up really changing your life, Gregg, in many ways. So it'd be great to unpick all of that today. Yep. I suppose the first question, Gregg, as we do with all our guests, is the whole Character Podcast is based on character. We're really intrigued as to who people are, how they respond to situations. So ultimately, what is their character like? What does character mean to you?
I think character to me is it's what we do when no one's looking. You know, that's how I describe it. It's how do you adapt, or how do you behave when faced with a situation, be that positive situation or a challenging situation. How are you and how do you deal with that? Yeah. And for me, that's character. I think my life story, I've had a few situations that have been quite arduous or challenging, and it's how I've dealt with that. What have my values been in that situation? Yeah. And I think that's something I developed. It wasn't always great,
sure thing,
but I actually developed a set of values that worked for me and helped me present my character and who I was. I mean that authentically. Okay. It's not just reading the textbook and trying to be somebody else, or trying to fit in, or because I think you have to have that identity. Your identity.
Absolutely.
The more authentic we can be, the more real that feels, and the happier we are.
Definitely. And Gregg, your life story's been extreme, right? Was life as exhilarating as we might imagine, or what was your childhood like?
Every bit of me wants to say no, right? But actually reflecting quickly then, but I suppose even my childhood was up and down, and I'm not diagnosed with an ADHD, but when I look back, I've got when I did my masters in psychology, for example, I thought, okay, there's definitely a lot of traits here, and I suppose that does explain my childhood to in some degree. And I only mention that because when we talk about highs and lows, if I was interested in something and I found it fun and I had that real sense of purpose, I was all in.
Really?
Sport, being outdoors, riding motorcycles, bikes, being around my brothers, being around friends, causing mischief. Hopefully nothing ever malicious, but just being outdoors. And that was a massive appeal for the military to me, because I didn't perform particularly well at school. And that's interesting, because I've got two parents that are teachers.
And you mentioned the master's degree.
So
educationally,
now studying a PhD. So I have I'm a big proponent of lifelong learning, but it took me a while to learn how to get the best out of myself. I always credit the military for that. Because I did, up until that point, I had these huge ups and downs and crashes, and never quite knew how to apply myself. And developed, who I was as a person. And it took time, but we got there.
Any role models looking back? During school?
Loads. My father. My father grew up in Middleton, North Manchester, on Langley Council Estate. Probably one of the biggest in Europe at the time. Had no right to become a teacher. You look at the statistics and the deprivation that he grew up in. But somehow by hook or by crook, got into the local grammar school. Did well, applied himself. There were a few ups and downs with him, and it's a great story. But eventually became a head teacher of a local primary school. Wow. And what a role model to have. Unfortunately, I lost my father when I was around 15. So again, that was one of my my big troughs in life. To lose somebody who was so, inspirational, and I don't use that word lightly. He genuinely was a role model, and somebody who put up with my challenges.
Right.
Because being the son of a head teacher, I think there's certain expectations of how you behave. So when your son's, being brought home by the police and the motorcycle's getting wheeled back into the shed, you can imagine that it wasn't, the done thing, and the neighbours enjoyed switching the curtains. but no, listen, he accepted me and my brothers for who we were, and we had a whole lot of fun. And the same, sports coaches. I was really lucky to have some of the football and rugby coaches I had. I had a great teacher called Andrew Conroy, and he got us into reading books, and to get a guy like myself,
he's a magician,
loved being outdoors and not particularly good at sitting still in the classroom. But he did it in such a clever way.
Right. Okay.
He got us interested. I remember falling in love with like Shakespeare and stuff like that because of the way he could present it, and he'd let us watch like the latest Romeo and Juliet film. And we came at it from a different way. Actually, this is cool. This isn't just sitting here and being expected to behave. And I think, the commonalities in all the role models that I think I always, aspired to be, was that acceptance of getting the best out of someone.
Sure. So when you're 15 then, your father passed?
Yeah.
Did that have a profound effect
it
short term, or did you feel that you dealt with that then?
It did. I think it was the first time I'd ever experienced depression.
Right, okay.
I just lost a sense of, like I say, I was so physically active, playing sport, rugby, football, you name it. I would play tiddlywinks competitively. I was a perfect candidate for the military. But I just lost my passion. It felt like someone put my fire out.
Were you aware it was depression?
No, not at all. Not at all.
You just thought you felt.
I was probably, using alcohol inappropriately at a young age to cope, to fit in, for whatever reason. And unfortunately, I just felt my energy sap. I didn't want to go and attend the clubs. I didn't want to engage. I had a little part-time job, and I remember that fizzling out because I just didn't have the energy or the desire or the self-esteem to actually, all the things that I had up until that point. It just felt like the bubble burst. And obviously, it's my first experience of it. I didn't know what was happening. I can remember people saying, "Oh, it'll pass," and he's mourning his dad and all these things, and
kind of like stereotypical stuff. You'll go through a process of grief, and you'll be okay at the other end.
It was, and clearly I was grieving, but I think when I look back now, I was incredibly depressed. I'd fell out of love with everything, and that was a horrible emotion to be sat with at a young age.
Absolutely. And where did the military come into view? Obviously, you didn't join straight from school, did you?
No, I didn't.
You had a few years.
I didn't. I did my GCSEs. It was it was the final GCSE year that my father actually passed. I was quite unwell in the couple of years leading up to that. But thanks to a couple of great role models, I just about scraped through with my English and maths.
Right.
Which is, if anybody's listening who's how to do GCSEs, listen, prioritise certain things, because that will open doors, and it did for me.
Okay.
Everything else we kind of forgot about because I wasn't, I hadn't been attending the lessons. I hadn't done the enough work, and I was a scientist. It kills me that I didn't apply myself to science, but we'll come back to that. But luckily, maths and English. We got there thanks to some incredible role models. They said, "Listen, these are the ones you can't mess up. These are the ones you can pass. Right. This is how we're going to do it."
Was that family or the school?
This was two teachers. I mentioned the Andrew Conroy, the English teacher, who reminded me that I was more than capable, and and I was. Thankfully, and the maths teacher who, up until that point, we didn't have a great relationship. But actually gave me the straight, which I loved. Told me as it was. So actually, for somebody to say, we believe in you, and we think you can get this, and the reason why it's so important to get this is it opens doors to college, and opportunities, work. Don't let this entire episode own you,
define you. If you like. And have you spoke to them since? Because they sound like two really inspiring people. That probably a bit of a
and didn't have to do it, right?
Exactly that.
Gone,
100%.
Okay, Gregg's attendance is 30%. He's not putting any effort in. Why
I won't meet him halfway.
But went out of their way to go, above and beyond to give somebody an opportunity who had perhaps been dealt a bad hand. But they saw my character. They saw those values that I was perhaps struggling to live up to.
Yeah.
But deep down, like for example, the English teacher was also the rugby coach.
Right. Okay.
He was from St Helens.
Yeah.
So a big rugby league,
Right.
player, coach, and he, got our team flying. I was the captain of that team. So actually, to have somebody who knew my values on the pitch, and knew that I would lead the line, knew that I would run my socks off, knew that I would, he was able to say, I need you to do that here.
Right.
I need you to work hard. I need you to, apply yourself. And that gave me the purpose. And I've always been good when you give me a clear, defined goal.
Yeah.
I can get my teeth stuck in there.
Okay.
And begin to believe in myself. And I found that incredibly useful. And maybe it was having the two ambitions. It wasn't too overwhelming.
Okay.
But I also know reflecting. I didn't know this at the time, obviously. Reflecting. Sometimes when you've got so many things going on, different classes, this, that, and the other, the whole experience of school, on occasions, I did find overwhelming.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I don't think you're in an exclusive club. I think a lot of young people do. There's a huge empathy piece there in relation to those two key staff, right? You're going through a time in year 11 that is really unique and really extreme for a loved one to pass away. But what those two adults shown you is empathy and understanding that what you're going through is tough. It's extremely challenging. And they could have probably gone one of two ways. The acceptance of, well, Greg can't be asked being here, so we can't be asked him being here. But they probably looked and thought, this is unique. The circumstances in is unique. Is that left a lasting impression on you?
Yeah, it did. And, there was a few times, the things weren't always perfect. For example, the next step, I managed, because I had the Master in English, I went on to an A-level program at the local college and, had ambitions, I was still thinking about the military, but thought, play the smart move. I'll go and do my A-levels and might open other doors. And, and I lasted one term at college because I didn't turn up to a few things. I was depressed. I was on the couch. I was, used to being able to swan in when I wanted. And I remember turning up one morning and, the principal said, can I have a quick word? If you don't want to be here on your bike, you've got a decision to make. You either 100% attendance from now or off your pot. And, me being where I was mental health wise, perhaps a little bit of ego, perhaps a little bit of arrogance, perhaps a bit of a hangover from being, looked after at school a little bit. I chose the wrong option. I'll show you. What did that decision, mean to me? That meant low skill work. It meant getting on a building site. It meant aspirations have gone like this. It meant self-esteem's gone like this. It meant I'm probably exposed to an environment where I'm using alcohol a little bit more than I should be. Poor behaviours, sleep, smoking, poor nutrition, not engaging in sport and exercise. Things that just didn't keep me well. And I kick myself even now when I think back to that. Knee-jerk, impulsive reaction.
And it seems a foreign land in comparison to where you ended up, Greg, right? So being in the military, doing the Commando course, which is unbelievably arduous, to being an Olympian and kind of like a picture of health to a certain degree, that pathway must have been remarkable. But where did it start? Where was the kind of seed first planted for the military?
My father was like a contractor for the military, teaching the the pad brats, the kids growing up, the servicemen and women's children. So I loved it. We lived in on the pad. He had a house. So it kind of was the military lifestyle without the green uniform. So it's interesting, and I think there was the way he spoke about it. As much as I can't remember it, the way he spoke about it, the friends he continued to have. It was just something that lent itself to me, and I thought, cool. And I was quite well read on military books and Chris Ryan and people like this. So just through my falling in love with reading at school, and I'm 19 years old. I've watched a few friends probably finish the A levels, going off to university, and I've had a quick decision to make in terms of which way are you going here, mate? Because we've all got options, and it's probably when I started to make a smarter option, because I felt I'd probably kicking myself a little bit for making the poor moves, and relating it to character, taking the easy option, which when I reflect on when was I performing at my best on the rugby pitch, or when was I performing at my best in the academics, in the English classes, when I was doing well, in the maths, when I was applying myself. And I had to be honest with myself, and I remember going to the recruitment office, and the recruiter was, brutally honest as they are. So I said, hey, what did you do after school? And I said, I went to college. You've wasted a lot of opportunity there, and I thought, God, you probably possibly could have come in as an officer. But I was like, listen, we are where we are.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm keen to join, and you know, I did quite well in the test, and offered me the engineers, which suited me. I thought I could see a real progression. You know, like I'll get a trade, you know, something I can leave the military with. You know, you've learnt the hard way, and I've been on a few building sites, so I appreciated a trade. Thought, you know, like there's a backup plan there, which felt like I was thinking a bit smarter.
It does. There's some logic there, isn't there? Absolutely, yeah. So it was always engineers. You never joined expecting to do anything other?
No. I think when I first turned up, if I'm honest, you know, I knew a little bit about the military, but I kind of thought it'd be like a local infantry. I kind of thought that was, if I'm honest, I thought that's like the way the military works. I thought you go, you do the local infantry thing, and then you become a specialist in something. Right. And then, you know, quickly found out, you know, listen, here's the book, have a quick look. You know, went through a few, you know, options. And you know what? I just think it appealed to me. I think the core, you know, the history, you know, the variety of jobs, the likelihood that you're going to learn to be an infantier, as well as, you know, be academic if you want. There's opportunities to get degrees. You know, I was all right. This is sport. You know, a great sporting regimen. I was like, I feel quite homely here.
And then, so the journey began in 2006. You joined?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first couple of years, what was that like? And also, for those that are unaware of what the Commando course is like, do you want to give us a bit of a summary as to, firstly, why you wanted to do it, and secondly, what it was like as a course to complete?
I suppose it was the first time I'd been back in an environment since school where I was around a lot of other people.
Right.
So again, I had that overwhelming feeling.
But
it felt right. I was enjoying my time there, as daft as it sounds. There was the structure, discipline, you know, pushed me out of my comfort zone.
And there's a lot of positives within that, Greg, isn't there? There's a lot of teamwork and camaraderie, which is kind of quite hard to find outside of the military. But on balance, there's a lot of it's quite masculine. It's quite a bit of an ego thing going on, and people are kind of the race to the front to a certain degree. There's a world of things that it's quite new to experience, certainly when you're so young joining.
And it's competitive, right? And I think that appealed to the sportsman in me. I was like, okay, you can't get your ass kicked every session. Come on, you know, like, you know, gave up smoking on the spot, you know, started looking after myself, eating a bit better, you know, lost a ton of weight, you know, but, you know, we talk about positive role models. My section commander had a Green Beret. And, you know, like, he got us to read about the history of the commandos, you know, so like Hitler's poem and, you know, the order of, you know, if you in the World War, you know, if you capture a commando, there's no sort of mercy to be shown. And it appealed to me, you know, that reader in me, that historian, that, and I was beginning to pin my values on some of the things I was hearing. You know, I was beginning to think, oh God, you know, like this is a group of, you know, guys that are just doing something incredible. You know, like the Saint Nazaires who are reading about it, learning about it, and it was like putting yourself, you're volunteering. There's something in that volunteering to put yourself out in that, you know, unlikely to come home position, doing it for the right reason. And it really appealed to me. It really appealed. And I suppose I was hook, line and sinker then. I really want to do this. Went to Gibraltar Barracks, which is our phase 2. And that was more like being back in an academic setting. You know, it was homework in the evenings and learning about, you know, knot tying, how to start an engine, pumps, you know, all these different things as an engineer you need to be able to do. But again, it was busy. There was a purpose. There was a clear definition, you know, defined role. So I was doing well, enjoyed it.
And did you feel you said at the start there, or earlier on, that you were at the back of the pack to start with? Was that physically, or was that across the board generally?
Yeah, across the board.
Okay. And did you feel you went on quite quickly then to achieve something quite remarkable within your first year, 18 months of being in the military? Did you feel you rose through the ranks quite quickly?
Yeah, I think I think the thing that grew was my self-esteem and confidence with myself, and you know, perhaps I had been doubted, or perhaps I had been looked past. But actually, what I became more confident in doing was saying, I might not be ready yet, but I'm going to put myself in a challenging position, and I'm going to work until I will run through that brick wall. You know, and that took me to you know, the All Arms Commando course. You know, and I turned up and you know, didn't quite have the upper body strength to start with. You know, like I'm struggling on pull-ups and rope climbs and. You know, I remember the DS almost being like, why are you here? You know, and it's hard. That's hard. Yeah, that's hard. You know, it's
absolutely.
But I wanted it. I knew. Again, I talk about that purpose. I knew. I was like, I'm in the right environment. I'm just going to have to learn. I'm going to have to work. I'm going to have to do all the things that are within my control. And again, we talk about role models.
Yeah.
I was very lucky that I had, a guy called Eddie Williams,
Right.
a guy called Nick Ingram, who actually, could have turned around and said, don't get me wrong, on occasions reminded me that I needed to quickly improve to be there. And,
Right.
you can get sent back to your holding unit, which would have been quite embarrassing at the time. It would have been going back to Gibraltar Barracks with my tail between my legs. And, but actually, they put their time, the effort, made an action plan, to say, well, actually, listen, if you do this 3-4 times a week, and this every day, and eat well, get your protein, all things I was learning about, but even that was cool. I was watching my body develop, I did develop the strength and was able to do some things I hadn't been able to do before, or hadn't been able to do for a while before, like regains, new skill, or climbing a 30-foot rope and being comfortable and competent, being able to take my arms off at the top, and just fun stuff.
And did you start the course with the expectation of passing it, or did you start the course just thinking, I'll just give it all I got, and see how it lands?
In all honesty, that. And what the engineers is very good at is actually not sending you to Lympstone, which is where you do the Commando course per se. We do what we call a beat up. So and if you're not going if you're not ready.
Right. Yeah.
And I was just about ready, I would say. Eddie Williams disagreed.
Right.
But I was passing the test, but I was on a bad day, I might have failed a test.
Right.
And he said, I want to hold on to you.
Okay.
I want you to go when you're going to crush the test.
Yeah.
You think you've got another 12 weeks, if not longer now, to spend some time here.
Yeah.
We won't be to every day. We'll go towards the end, but we'll start slowly. We'll develop your strength. What a decision. It was hard. That was hard.
Was that demoralising? Did you see it as a setback?
Horrible. I remember having a tear in my eye, trying to hold it together, because I was like, I don't know if I can do it again. It's hard. Like you say, 3 o'clock in the morning, wet through. I'm thinking I'm replaying this film reel in my head, like, can you do that again? But I wanted it, and I knew I did. So very quickly I was like, I'm going to do exactly what he said.
Right.
I'm going to go into process mode. I'm going to go into robot Greg. I'm going to do what I need to do. And the interesting thing is, it was hard to see my peers leave. Yeah. But it was also interesting to see the respect my peers had. When I turned back up with that green beret on, I thought there might be a bit of Mickey taking. And don't get me wrong, there's a few things I'd like, can you do a pull up yet? But listen, you got to have thick skin in that environment.
Yeah.
But without trying to sound big headed, actually, when I went to Lympstone, I smashed it. I smashed the test. I was able to do it with a smile on my face. Yeah. It was hard, but it was within my ability. Yeah. And I was also able to start looking not after people, but like aware of people. Yeah. Like, for example, a friend of mine who I still see now shares a story where he says, he arrived at Chibnall, which is where we do the beat up, and he arrives Tuesday evening. It's piddling it down with rain. Yeah. He gets there in the dark. He knows he's got to be up early Wednesday. He doesn't know what he needs. And there was one door open on the block. Because I've been there the longest, I've managed to nick the big room, which was in the middle. All the other rooms were quite small. Yeah. There's a room in the middle, which is the one you want, right? Yeah. Because I was the one that stayed behind. But what I always made sure I did was leave my door open. Right. And I'd learned off the previous course. Actually, like camaraderie, helping each other, making sure the new guy knows you need a water bottle in the morning. So if you turn up without a water bottle, guess what? Right, okay. You're going to go and run and get one. And you're going to get very wet. Yeah. So, the Billy basics, they're turning up with the right kit on. But actually, it would have been really easy for me or anybody else, and plenty of people did, shut the door, because it's me time now. Yeah. I'm going to ring the girlfriend, or I'm going to watch TV. I'm going to zone out a little bit. Yeah. That was a big learning curve for me, because I think I went from perhaps somebody who needed other people to operate well, to actually being somebody who was beginning to stand on my own 2 feet, and to actually share, teach other people, become a good
leader, to a certain degree. Yeah, exactly. So you went on to the course, complete the course first time as well, did you?
Yeah. So once I actually got on the course,
Yeah. And you mentioned Eddie. I don't know Eddie, but you mentioned 2 or 3 times there. It sounds like he was quite inspirational in getting you onto that. What was it about him? Because to have that conversation with somebody,
I think he was giving me a chance. He was sergeant major level. Like PT corps. I think 3 para background. Interesting that he'd come and to then go and like be the head PT for the Commando All-Arms Commando course. And you just think, you look at this guy and you go, wow, he's giving me the time of day. And don't get me wrong, you didn't get much time of day, but you got, he was respectful. Yeah. And if you messed him around or didn't meet the expectation, trust me, you soon would, or you would not be in that environment. But I just felt like, again, like the best role models I had, they didn't always just say, yes, Greg, no, Greg. They actually said, okay, no, Greg, or that's not the standard required, Greg. Yeah. This is how we're going to get there. Yeah. And once I was given that opportunity, I would run through a brick wall for you. Yeah.
should we fast forward 2 years, Greg? Should we talk about the tour? So was that your first tour of Afghanistan, 2009?
First tour, all new, you know.
Again. It was with a commando unit, a 2-4 commando, so amazing batch of comrades to work alongside you as well. A brilliant unit to go out there.
Yeah.
So what was the objective of going? What was Herrick about?
Yeah, so we got filtered out into sections within 3 commando brigades. So there was, you know, a section of sappers, you know, Royal Engineers who got put with 4 or 5 commandos. So with the Royal Marines, you know, we were put into small sections, predominantly there to do engineering tasks. But you know, out in the forward operating bases, it was you know, very much infantry skills first, and then you know, engineering skills, things like pumping water, making ping pong tables, making sure the weights were decent.
Priorities,
all the important things. But you know what, actually, that suited me down to the ground. And like I say, when I thought of engineering up until that point, that's exactly what I thought. I thought, you know, it's about being, you know, thinking outside the box. It's about making the best of difficult situations. It's about trying to bring as much comfort as you can to, you know,
fixing and helping.
And this was the brilliant thing about being an engineer. We actually got a hot shower working. You know, there was an old boiler we found. You know, between me, the plumber, and you know.
Not sure if it's gas safe, but we got it going.
I remember, you know, we had the Marine lads coming into our block, and they were like, we had a TV rigged up. You know, we had a hot shower. You know, what's going on in here? But you know, we were also willing to, you know, have some fun with that. And you know, like I say, we built a concrete ping pong table, and you know, made sure that there were things like the weights, you know, and then, you know, the more professional jobs, you know, the work we were actually there to do, you know, making sniper hides and bringing safety and security to the front line, you know, doing a lot of the bombering, you know, looking for IEDs, you know, making sure vehicles could move through over the bridges safely, you know, so a lot of I would say undervalued work, but exactly what we want to do. You know, sappers are used to getting their hands dirty and not getting much praise. And I love that. That was exactly where I wanted to be.
Right, quite humble. So going out on tour, was it what you expected it to be in terms of being on Herrick itself?
Yes and no, because I didn't really know where I was going to end up. And I was very fortunate. You know, I've talked about my sense of like being overwhelmed, and I think I'm quite a claustrophobic person, just naturally. But you know, I grew up in a rural area. I like space, and I ended up in Kajaki, quite North Helmand. You know, huge dam, very rural area, I would say. You know, farming communities. It suited me. You know, they had the beautiful, you know, foothills of the Himalayas in the background. Wow. It was almost surreal because, you know, you're picturing Afghanistan, you're picturing at that time desert, you know, arid, rocky, arid, you know, difficult terrain. Yeah, and there was that if you look this way, but if you kind of look this way, you know, you had the dam, the peaks, you know, snow-capped peaks. It was you know, quite surreal. It was beautiful. You know, we'd go and drop supplies off, and you know, it was an incredible run route. You know, we could run up, and you know, that was a bit surreal because one morning you could be on a fighting patrol, and in the afternoon you could be asked just to take something up to the peaks, and you know, it's almost like you're in the Alps, you know, like on a hiking holiday. It wasn't. But I think that was Afghanistan in a nutshell for me. My experience that it's this incredibly complex country. You know, like we look at the history, the traditions, the crossroads. You know, the different cultures, the markets. The
way of life is so ingrained, right?
Super complex.
So ingrained. It is. It's weirdly complex. I suppose it's just part of the reason why not many have succeeded over there on the grand scheme.
And it's a very old country. You know, a lot of culture, a lot of history. A lot of evolution, you know,
and extreme terrain.
Exactly that. You know, you know, you bring up the history there, and you read about the Russians, and you read about the when the Brits were there years ago, and you think, and then you see the terrain, and you go, oh, okay,
exactly,
you know,
they're already 5-0 up, aren't they?
There's no, you know, very little infrastructure, no hard standing roads, very rocky terrain. The temperatures can, you know, be so varied in a day. You know, you can go from freezing temperatures right up to 40 degrees. You know, and it's crazy. But
So what was day to day like over there?
Yeah, it was busy. You know, we were constantly patrolling. You know, we had a clear objective, which was to defend our flat. You know, to keep the dam as safe as possible. So that involved patrolling quite a large flat to keep, you know, the enemy at bay, so we don't become just a sitting duck, an easy target. And the unfortunate nature of that was the one sort of technique they had, which was probably we heard a lot about, was the improvised explosive devices, the IEDs. So that would be the chosen method to cause as much disruption as possible. We'd had a couple detonated in the tour, one fatality. And then I stepped on one. And
could you take us back to that day? What was it like? Could you take us back to that day itself? How it started. It
was actually like a lot of these stories you hear. It was our last patrol.
Right.
Literally, it was our last patrol. I'd signed that. I had my little storeroom that I'd signed over.
Right.
Managed to get all the tools I'd lent out because I'm a good egg. I'd actually been sound rather than So I managed to get some sort of that'll do. Like we can sign that over. We were beginning to look forward to going home.
Were you really that close to coming home?
Really that close.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't think we were ever told this is definitely your last patrol. But the rumors were out, and the new boys were due to be flying in, and anyway, we go out on the patrol. It's Friday. It's weather's good, routine, nothing. A few pot shots here and there, which was quite normal in Kajaki. I remember pushing into a compound. We were beginning to be about as far as we used to patrol out, and we got a few pot shots. And I was asked to try and get some elevation. So if it becomes a little bit more fierce, we're in an elevated position and we can return fire. So there's a little bit of pressure on to get into the position, but it wasn't the most stressful day. I remember barmering into a compound. We've been there before. There's a lot of metal signature around, what you tend to find in the compound, so the buildings that people would have been living in but weren't at the time. Mopeds or food containers, and this one was particularly bad. So it's difficult to barmer. And I remember pushing up to where would be almost like steps and a bit of a collapsed roof to get up into the elevation. And I just took that step, and the next thing I knew, I had almost like a Big Dipper sensation. When you're a kid and you go on a Big Dipper and you've got that stomach at the top of the roller coaster and you're at the bottom of it. That feeling, that it was that, and it was that sensation of being thrown. I think I felt that before. I think the sound, the noise, the smell, it was so overwhelming that everything just went boof, and that's how it felt. It just felt like time stopped.
And have you got a vivid memory of that?
Up until that point, and
Seriously?
then my memory of actually what happened after that is not great, and it's different to perhaps what actually happened. Which is interesting. I can remember like almost looking up like, cool, right, we've done a really good job. And then it was, it almost felt like, oh man,
really?
there was that emotion, and then reality came back. Of like, okay, you're laid on the floor in Afghanistan. Shirt's been ripped off. Weapons gone wherever, which was a weird feeling after 4 or 5 months of being like this.
Exactly.
I'm like, hold on, why am I led really vulnerable, which felt like a really vulnerable position. And I just couldn't sit up. I couldn't, and that was hard because, I suppose I always thought if anything was to happen and I was alive and could treat myself, I would do that. But I couldn't sit up. I couldn't. I couldn't move. And
so your life at that point, Greg, was to pass over to your comrades as quick as you can.
Exactly that.
Okay.
Exactly that. And I remember, getting hearing the lads, sort of Steve,
and did they get straight to work?
Me shouting back and somebody being like surprised.
Yeah.
That I've like gone, I don't think it was probably comprehensible, but and I like Cole Brownie, legend, just like, we're gonna get to you, but we're gonna have to, do it right. And perhaps the thing that I didn't ever realize about getting a Green Beret is you're trying to reach a standard, right? And it was such a real life experience of actually being literally carried by your comrades, who are saving your life. They've done the incredible first aid care. They've got to you in a quick but in a sensible, skilled fashion. So they've not set any secondary devices up. They've organised, getting you out of there. There's a plan in motion. The fire support team have got elevated position. They're hammering the position that so the helicopter can land. You know,
Right.
this, it's a really strange feeling.
Yeah.
You know, to be like, a lot of things have come together to get me extracted. And,
absolutely.
you know, get you know, ultimately save my life. And,
Yeah.
you know, to be sat here now, incredibly grateful and just
Yeah.
just in awe of that environment. You know, and I think, you know, it's double-sided. That I think there was times in my recovery where I felt almost like a bit of a fraud, because I was like, wow, you know, I was almost saved by that environment, and felt a bit like, did I fail? Did I?
Wow.
You know, it was big emotions. You know, like, wow, I let myself down, let the, you know, brotherhood down, and it probably slipped back into that depression, that depressed mindset. But it was that, you know, it was that, like, when I saw it work so well, and I was missing being part of it, and I wanted to be part of it.
Yeah.
And it's almost like my brain tricking me, or, you know, like that depressed Gregg coming out, or just saying like, if you hadn't have done that, or if you hadn't have done that. And yeah, they were big emotions to deal with. And I'm glad I did. You know, I'm glad I did. I was able to have the conversation with a few of the lads. And, you know, conversations with a therapist, just to say, I know it sounds really weird, but this is how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of acceptance came with that. You know, that, hey, listen, it was a risky job. You know, and it was a job that I volunteered to do. You know, there was something in that actually, I think that's when the penny dropped. That,
right.
You know, what are the values of a commando? And I said it right back at the start. Volunteering to do this isn't, nothing's done to you as a commando.
Yeah.
You choose. You know, you choose to put yourself in that position. So that's something I've taken through all the arduous things I've done since.
Right.
You know, like the start line at the Paralympics.
Yeah.
Gregg, you have chose to be here. This is going to be hard. I knew how good the opposition was next to me.
Yeah.
My family didn't, by the sounds of it. They thought I was going to absolutely smoke it, but I was in an
So did Jimmy, who works here. He came in with his phone to this office and said, "Look, Gregg's on now. He's going to smash this." But then,
it was an incredibly tight final. But, you know, just having that clear, conscious moment, and I do it. You know, I do it with my PhD. You know, it's a different challenge at the moment. But when I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, or you know, people aren't answering my survey, and I'm like, I really need to get this done, and I'm feeling tense. I go, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Let's get back to you know, your character, your values.
Yeah.
You want to do this. You volunteered to do this. You've put yourself. You know, you don't have to do this.
Sure.
You know, it's not particularly well paid. But you think this will benefit you.
Yeah.
And also, at the other side of this, you know, difficult challenge or the stretch period is going to be the good stuff, right? You know, the Paralympic gold medal, the accreditation, the qualification, you know, the job opportunity, you know, so you know, I think it was an incredibly difficult thing to experience, to learn so much about culture, about character, but actually having struggled with it, and I probably make that sound a little bit flippant, I sat in that emotion for 6 to 9 months of serious, you know, like serious mental health challenge, and not being able to move past this fraudulent feeling, and not really wanting to connect with the community because I just felt like an outcast, or and that was me, not the community. I remember, you know, rejecting several invites because I just didn't know how to say yes, or how to turn up authentically and be me without saying, I don't feel I fit in anymore. But yeah, we worked past that, and like I said, it was a eureka moment, a euphoric moment, just to say, hold on, it's bigger than that. I need to get out of my own way here a little bit.
Yeah. And for those that can't see the injuries today, Gregg, are you okay to just summarise exactly what happened? Is that right?
So as a result of the improvised explosive device, I lost one leg above the knee, one below the knee, a few other, you know, like the tip of my finger, but a bilateral hearing loss, which is probably on a daily basis my biggest challenge.
Really?
I really struggle with my hearing. In this sort of setting, I'm probably okay, but if you was to speak behind me, you know, my friend Jim, we have a mutual friend, and colleague Jimmy. You know, he gets sick of me because I'm forever ignoring him and going, what?
It's not a bad thing when it comes to Jimmy, to be honest with you.
But no, that's you know, people that know me know I struggle with that, and you know, it's almost like part of my character now.
yeah, exactly. So the next stage then is trying to deal with this, naturally a catastrophic incident. I take it a year or two. I take you at Headley Court. When you flew back to the UK and got support there for a couple of years. When was the decision to leave the military, and what was that like at that point?
Yeah. It was. I'd been sent back to work. I got sent back to Chivna. You know, I think I got to that stage where Headley Court had said, which is a great stage to get to. You know, listen, there's not much more we can do. You know, you're pretty competent on your legs. You know, now it's about time and experience. You know, and you're only going to get those two things away from here. You know, like, you can't just be in a the bubble. You know, you got to go out. You've got to be stared at a little bit. You know, they're not saying this, but you've got to.
Yeah.
You know, I wear shorts like literally 99.9% of the time. You know, it helps me. You know, if I'm wearing long trousers, you know, people start to think, is he drunk? Is he, you know, because there's something going on with my gait, right? Whereas I think, do you know what? We're all much more comfortable if Greg just wears shorts, because people go, that explains it. You know, I'm comfortable with that because I don't need, you know, to be bumping into people or people assuming I'm drunk or you know, something. So you only learn that confidence from, because I would have, you know, at first I was wearing jeans and long, trying to hide it, and now, you know, totally comfortable in like, you know, this works for me. Yeah. That I'm, you know, because I get plenty of people, oh, why do you wear shorts all the time? You're showing them off. You know, actually it works for me. So
exactly that. Yeah.
But you become comfortable in being so positive or putting what you need first, because that's time and experience, right? Like it's almost a skill. But you know, I wasn't as good as that. You know, now I'm probably very good at it. Whereas you know, at first, you know, I remember being back on barracks, you know, back at 2-4 Engineer Commando, where you're in the, you know, around an elite group and trying to wear boots, which was really difficult, and walking around, and it was, you know, even standing in the galley queue, you know, which could be long, you know, for 20-25 minutes, and getting to the feeling difficult, having to carry a tray, and it was those sort of situations where I was like, I'm done. I'm not fighting for this. And the you know, listen, that side being that it's very likely I would have been medically discharged anyway. Okay. But I think I just admitted defeat. I was like, I am never going to be in this environment and be comfortable in what I bring to this environment. And that's cool. Because you know what, when I did the Commando course, it was the values and the ability to pass tests, to be, you know, part of the machine. And I'd felt firsthand what the machine can achieve. You know, when the lads rescued me, and I go, every person within that machine played the part. Absolutely. And I can't. And that's okay. You know, I can live with that. What I can't live with is being given the position within that machine and not quite being able to do it. Right. And because I think I'd be more uncomfortable in that than than hanging on to something that isn't meant to be. So anyway, I medically discharged. But yeah, the difficulty that came with that was just knowing what to do next.
And it's exploring, Greg, a new purpose, right?
100%.
Establishing who you are, because quite clearly you joined the military, extremely driven, achieved something remarkable. Was it like a marriage that ended that you didn't want to end? Was it a divorce that you didn't want, or did you take control of that last
divorce
part?
Is probably the right word, because I'd got to the point where I was like, I'm done. Right. I want out. And you know, in some ways, when I reflect on, you know, the military, it can almost be a role model in a strange way, right? This is my theory, the theory of Gregg Stevenson here, so bear with it. But it almost becomes like a father figure in a way, especially for, you know, a lost boy like me who joined, because it's this stability, it's this establishment, it's this thing that isn't going away, it's this thing that, you know, gives you the home truths every now and again. You know, and has a very strong high value that you aspire to. The military doesn't, you know, bring itself down to your expectation, or you know, and it's an honest environment, and it doesn't always give you everything you deserve. But when I left it, it was still there, but it didn't want me, and it felt, or I didn't want it, you know. Right. Which was a weird feeling. It was like a breakup of a relationship. Because it was like, in some ways I really want out, and in other ways it was like, I'm really going to miss it. You know, so it was almost like, you know, a breakup of a relationship, or, you know, like losing my father again in a, you know, not in such a catastrophic way, but in like a strange emotion way. So I think I was depressed again. You know, I think that's, unfortunately, you know, the way my brain works, or however, you know, that I can slip back into that mentality. So, you know, there was a bit of excessive alcohol use, and just going back, not being as physically active as I was, but, you know, that was the point where I was very fortunate to get the job opportunity, you know, in the NHS. So you know, that was my saving grace, because I think that's when I bounced back into rehabilitation mode, Greg, or you know, helping Greg, you know, purpose, you know, driven Greg, Greg who wants to, you know, be ambitious, or have fun, engaging, you know, care about other people, you know, see other people do well, bring something to the party, and all those things really help me. You know, like my self-esteem. You know, I'm like, right, I've got a little 9 to 5. That's what I know. I'm not doing that, you know, and I can get to the weekend, I can feel accomplished. Exactly. You know, I can work on my own fitness. I can, you know, watch what I'm eating. I can, you know, get some strength, and that's probably what brought me to sport.
And Greg, you touched on a small nugget there of rowing, and that's been a huge part of your life over the last 2 or 3 years. What was it about that? So did you start rowing during rehab? Was that something that you took hold?
Yeah, actually, it's an interesting one, rowing. I got really into my running at Gibraltar Barracks in the military, and I kept hurting my foot. So what I'd do is I'd jump on the rowing machine. I remember it in the gym upstairs at Gibraltar Barracks, and it was always quiet. Nobody wants to go on the rowing machine, right? So, people are on the running machines, school trainers, you name it, they're doing it. Rowing machine was always quiet, and I could take myself up there, if I just needed a little bit of space. It was always quiet. Right, and I'm sure, looking back, my technique was horrific.
Right, just pulling it as hard as you can.
There's no method to it. I'll probably just go there and rag it. But what I did notice is it was bloody good for my fitness. And I always felt really fit when 4 or 5 weeks of doing it once or twice a week, coupled with the runs and some weights, and now I know a bit more about nutrition. And I saw a massive difference. So I'd always respected rowing. Never really been out on the water. And then after injury, I got really into running, and I kept hurting my back quite significantly. But I really wanted to run. That was my thing, right? Got to the point where it's not, I'm 90 odd kilos. The level of my injury, it makes it difficult to run. So actually, I've got an awkward gait because I've got an abalone and an above knee. I think if it was both the same, I could match. But actually, I'm really dominant on my right, and I run not quite as dominant on my left, so it becomes a bit. Anyway, it hurts my back. So we had to come up with something else. And I remembered rowing. And I was like, do you know, funny enough, you used to row when you'd hurt your foot, your big toe. Maybe you should try rowing. And around that time, the Invictus Games was quite a big deal. I remember sitting there. I was discharged in 2012, and I think that was the first Invictus Games, and that was probably when my head's up my backside a little bit. Feeling a bit sorry for myself, not quite sure where I fit in. And I remember seeing, again, we talk about role models and peers doing well, and I remember watching it being, it's a little kick up the arse for me. I remember sitting there smiling, thinking, I should be there really, and there's no reason why I'm not there. It's probably ego that stopped you getting there, because you probably wouldn't have gone and won because you've not been doing much. But you could have probably gone and competed. So that got me interested, and I noticed one of the sports was indoor rowing. And I was like, well, listen, you know how to move it. Probably not for, probably not going to win any awards for technique. But you've got long arms. I'm not picking something that I don't stand a chance in. I reached out a good friend of mine, Rich Hornsey, who's got a few CrossFit gyms and has a few big events. One of the lads who'd done really well away from the military, and I reached out to him and said, I can row a little bit, but just have a look at me, because I'm, is this how I should be doing it? And at this point, we knew nothing about categories, right? So I'm trying to row with legs on a sliding seat, and it's all a bit, now I sit on a stationary seat. And, I have almost like a device that holds me in, and anyway, at this stage, we don't know. I don't know. He doesn't know. Nobody knows. So we come up with the best solution we can. But actually, what he did that was really kind, and again, just somebody probably got the best out of me. Not that I knew this then, just some reflection, because he gave me, that 5%. I was giving him 105% back. Because, he said, listen, what I would do is I'd do a couple of long rows each week. If you can do 60 minutes, brilliant. Couple that with, like 15, 1 minute on, 1 minute off, so some high intensity stuff. And I'd never really thought of the high intensity. It was my first introduction. I always saw like a hill sprint. I never understood the physiology of the hill sprint. I thought it was just a punishment or something. Or, I kind of got sprinting, but my physiology wasn't very good at that. So it's what I needed to be doing. And as soon as I started doing that, again, the 4 to 5 weeks later, I'm beginning to get some good numbers here. And so by the time I went to the trials for Invictus, I was in good shape, and that was rewarding, because looking good, walking well, feeling actually this is benefiting more than just sporting ambitions.
Physically,
and at that stage, it was just I remember it was in Sydney, the Invictus Games, but went to the trials and set a really good 2K score, which is kind of the staple in rowing. That's the but what's your 2K time? That's what somebody would ask you if you got interested. And British Rowing said, listen, we want you to go to Invictus, and we want you to come and join our program. And I remember going home, and Mrs. Mel, was like, you want to go to Australia and join British Rowing? Like, do you want to rethink your life right now? So, we agreed that actually, let's forget going to Australia and gallivanting around, and let's focus on, the British Rowing opportunity. So.
So you couldn't do both?
I was still working. Young family. I have a very young family, two young boys, So I think it was a bit of a rap on the knuckles to say,
hey, have some fun, but not that much fun.
Mr. Hollywood,
like, the other side of the world,
before you try and take over the world. And she knows how purpose-driven I can be, and I have to be aware of that, right? That it can't just become. It's okay when you're 21 and you're going to Afghanistan. You can be that person, but I also wanted to be a good father. And, I'd felt the harsh reality of not having a dad. In my later teens, to be fair, but I knew the importance of having a good dad around.
Yeah.
Because I did. I was very fortunate to have that. So wound my neck in, went to do the British rowing thing, and unfortunately got an injury. I was potentially I was training to go to Tokyo.
Yeah.
It was between myself and the eventual gold medalist, a guy called Lawrence, who was great, incredible rower. So there's no saying I would have got his seat, but I was doing really well. I was within a shot of going there, and unfortunately developed a bone spur in my leg, which is quite common, especially in blast injuries.
Is it really?
Yeah. For whatever reason, I went in for an operation to get it taken care of.
Yeah.
It just got incredibly painful rowing. He was pushing on the end of the stump, almost breaking the skin at one point. It was like, I went in and there was a few other things needed taken care of. My sciatic nerve hadn't been quite put back right. And at that time I was experiencing quite a lot of shooting pain in my back. I thought it was a hangover from the running, or wasn't quite sure, but we think it was that. And I've not had it since the operation. Okay. So it was clearly needed taken care of. And I lost that opportunity. So that was it's quite difficult. But I think the smart thing, it was probably one of the first times in my life where I'd had this really quite difficult situation. I'd put a lot of work in, a lot of effort, and it'd been taken away from me to a degree. I felt like the military a little bit. But I was able to reflect on what had gone well in my discharge, and got back to work pretty quickly, probably a little bit more quickly than I should have done. Okay. But I was like, I cannot sit around the house and feel sorry for myself. I need to get back to work, even if it's a few hours a day, do a gradual return, whatever. And that was great and very kind to me. Keep up some sort of like peer support, go out of the house. I was going to a CrossFit gym at the time, and as much as I wasn't able to, do all the training, just go show your face, get out of the house, be part of a community.
Exactly.
Don't fall into like poor diet, sugary snacks, smoking. Keep yourself well. And what, lo and behold, I recovered incredibly well. Managed to keep the candle burning a little bit. I'd missed my opportunity to go to Tokyo, but you know what? Whatever. My Maslow's was in order.
Sure thing. So you kept your relationship with British rowing and still had a real interest in wanting to do it.
I remember turning around to him and saying, look, I think it was at that point, it was like there was like a year to Tokyo, and it was like, look, my opposition, for example, they'd just won the World Championships the year before, or whatever, or qualified, and it would have been very difficult for me to. And I've got a young family at home, so I think it was just actually being out of that environment, I was able to make a really balanced decision to say, you know what? Actually, I don't need this. This would be nice to have.
Exactly.
But I don't need it. I've got family. I've got everything. 6 years ago, I would have done anything for this. Don't balls it up. Because you've got a lovely wife, lovely house, lovely family, a lovely job. Actually, don't bite off. Don't try and spin that extra plate that's going to bring it all crashing down, which I can be guilty of.
To a certain degree, you lose the enjoyment and the fun goes out of it partly. Whereas that everything else is going well in life, partner, wife, kids, nice house, good job. It probably does feel like I'll give it all I've got, but that's not the most important thing in my life.
And that was lovely. That was lovely, and that was the first time, not to turn it into a sob story or something. I think it was the first time I'd ever taken that breath. Like I say, I can have a busy mind. That's my preset. And I think it was the first time, I'd been able to control that. And I'd worked hard to learn how to control. Like done the meditation, done the breathing techniques. And I always make it sound flippant, but Jimmy will tell you I'm the biggest geek on mental health, control techniques. Purely because I was the worst candidate. I was very, very poor at being able to bring myself down, bring my anxiety down, or probably not visibly on the surface, but I was a quiet struggler.
Okay.
And I think a lot of males are.
Absolutely.
I think it can be difficult sometimes to be overwhelmed and not know what to do with it.
100%.
But anyway, I bumped into box breathing, and it was phenomenal for me. And I took it really, to took it quite. At first, it was a bit of a joke, and then I took it quite seriously, and then I began to do it quite autonomously. You know, if I found myself in a position, you know, even like traffic jam or something, there's nothing you can do. Sit here, relax, take a breath, you know, and get a podcast on.
Sure.
Whatever, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Whereas like prior to that, I'd have let it get to me.
Right.
Need to be. I said I'd do this, and like I say, my emotions were on and off. I had no in between.
Sure.
So it was about learning how to control ebbs and flows. Yes, okay, you're involved in sport and difficult challenges. There have to be times where it's all about controlled aggression, pushing. You know, what can you get out of yourself? You know, drive.
Yeah.
But there's also times you need to be able to just gently turn that off, not
100%.
completely off, because I also know if you turn Gregg completely off, I might be in the pub smoking.
Right. Never see him again.
But you know, like learn how to live with, you know, and actually, do you know what? I just enjoyed life so much more.
Yeah. So, Gregg, should we talk about then the big accomplishment of the Paralympics? So, obviously, you had your journey of ups and downs in terms of wanting to get into rowing with Paralympic GB. So that was last year. Yeah. Last year when Jimmy burst into my office next door and said, "Dan, Gregg's on in half an hour," and showed me the screen what was going on. What was that journey like to the year or so prior to it, and also what was the experience of being there? Because that must have been remarkable.
It was so much. In my category, you row with somebody. It's a double. And it's a really interesting mix. It's a male and a female. Okay, so Lauren Rolls.
I've read about Lauren.
Who's an incredible person. You need to get her on the podcast. She rings me, and I've not spoken to Lauren since my Tokyo ambition. So you know, 2 years has passed. You know, maybe 3 years. You know. And myself and Lauren had a little bit of paddling together, but never were quite put together to row. You know, it was still, who's it going to be with Lauren? You know, that was where I'd left it. So I get this phone call, WhatsApp actually, just saying, "What are you up to at the moment?" And with Lauren, I'm like, I don't think she's too interested in
going to football. Or...
Well, actually, I'm taking the kids to football.
Exactly.
No, I thought, okay, where's it? But I was thinking, is it a work opportunity? Is it, you know, so I was a mental health practitioner at the time. And I also know Lauren's, you know, particularly passionate about mental health. And so I thought, I was thinking a bit of work or something. I'd like to have a call, and she offered the opportunity to go back, which was massive because British rowing, you don't just dip your toe in. You know, British rowing are going to be like, we want you here 6 days a week. You know, 3 sessions a day. You know, so you know, but fortunately the kids are a bit older now. You know, they're 13 and 10 now. So at the time, 11 and 8. So it's a big decision. Because you know, the first problem we had, or the first hurdle to jump, is to actually qualify for the Paralympics. So that would have been the summer before. So 2 years ago, we needed to come 5th or better at the World Championships to qualify. If you don't come 5th or better, forget it. You know, you have not qualified for the Paralympics. So we had like 18 months to get a partnership going and become competitive, so we can come in the top 5, so we can at least book our ticket and say, right, now we've got a year to really train. But it was awesome. Fortunately, I said yes. Mrs. was like, for God's sake, Gregg, you've got a full-time job. You're finally doing pretty well. You know.
So was that a lot of time away?
I would drive down to Reading on a Monday evening and come back on a Saturday afternoon.
All right, so it's a full-time job.
A day and a half at home.
Be back in the military.
You know, we tried to come up with every which way to do it. You know, like, could I go down and come back and go? But even the expense, you know, it was so expensive to the fuel. The accommodation, and you know, it gets to the point where you're beginning to think, this is cool, but at what point do we say enough's enough? You know, like, but I was pretty conscious that I'd been the nearly man before, and I was pretty conscious that I understood what it took to achieve. You know, I thought back to the Commando course loads. You know, the embarrassment, the shame, the frustration that came with like turning up and having to do 2 beat-ups. But also the accolades that came at the end of it, and I felt so many similarities with the rowing. I was like, you know, so many people when I walked into the building, oh, he's back, you know, and it was like, you know, like, how's he going to be? So, but I'd done so much work on myself. I think the Gregg who turned up with an ambition to go to Tokyo was still Gregg or off, you know. I still had that. I'd not shaped it. I was doing well, but I'd still not shaped it as well as I possibly have now, and still continuing to improve. You know, I'd hate to sit in anybody think I'm a finished article.
Exactly.
But that was cool because, you know, again, we had a clear objective. I'm living in this incredibly hectic, ridiculous life of driving up and down the country, trying to be a father. You know, putting so much on my wife. But you know what? We were a team, and it felt like in a way, it felt like an operational tour. It was like, right, we've got 2 years of this. It's not good. You know, like, it's not ideal. I'm sure it's not in any parenting manuals, but we all think this is cool. Even the boys go, like, and they're watching some of the races, and you know, 6 months after, you know, that phone call, we were sat on the start line of the European Championships, my first ever international regatta, in a place called Lake Bled in Slovenia, which is phenomenally beautiful. You know, you may have seen an image of it. It's it's the lake with a church in the middle of the lake. You know, Google it. And a lot of people get married there. It's you know, and I've turned up. I've not slept for 3 days because I'm so nervous. I'm trying my best to control myself, but I'm, you know, I'm on and off. You know, I know I need to work on that. Anyway, it just goes phenomenally well. The heats, we probably didn't row our best, but we got it. We won the heat. I'll be honest with you. I took my foot off the gas because I could see we were going to win. And I got an incredible telling off at the end of it, which is
so even though you're leading, you don't
but that, you know,
still maintain
the absolute ethos and the culture I was a part of. It was about every stroke you take is a privilege. And you were in a British rowing jersey. And you possibly could have just set a world record. But I'm not thinking like that. I'm thinking, oh my God, I've just won my first heat. You know what? You know, check this out. And what a reality check that was, though. And how cool is that? Because it reminded me of, you know, the Commando. You know, the first day where you turn up and you've got a green beret and you've got that look in your eye, and somebody goes, "Welcome, get the bruise on." You've got a 6 mile run. You just realise all you've done is the entrance test.
Exactly. We're back to the start again now. There's another race tomorrow. Prove yourself again.
It just popped that. But you know what it did? It popped the fear as well. So I go, okay, cool. I've got that first one under my belt. Got an opportunity, you know, to go into the final and to actually medal. You know, I'm not even thinking of winning at this stage. I'm like, if we can medal in my first ever
the
race,
Europeans as well.
European, on this beautiful lake and you know, quite iconic lake. What an introduction that'll be.
Absolutely.
And you know, maybe it'll, you know, because I've probably been away from home for 8 to 9 months living the crazy lifestyle. What a reward for the family, you know. So anyway, we go into the final, and it wasn't my best rowing, but it was bloody dogged rowing. I really went for it every stroke, right to the end, and we set a world record, won the race, you know, and what an exhilarating feeling, you know, and it was such a reward for all the hard work. You know, I'm probably 5 days no sleep at this point. Don't get me wrong, I'd had, you know, 2 or 3 hours here and there of just sleeping when I'm exhausted. But
so was the pressure on then for the world?
So
you were world record, European gold.
Off the bat, world record, first international regatta, gold medal. We had a couple of races which we called World Cups that summer to get even better. But then the big one was at the end of the summer in Serbia, Belgrade. And we have to come in the top 5 to qualify. On this point, we're feeling pretty confident. We've won the We've won the 2 World Cup races. You know, we've been to Italy, which was like our home ground. We do a lot of training there. Very, you know, we set another world record. I can't remember where else we went, but anyway, we've done this race, and we end up in Serbia. And it's probably the first time I'd ever experienced a bigger crowd. You know, para rowing tends to be put on early in the morning, earlier in the morning, you know, before the Olympic guys get there. But for the World Championships, you know, it's hot. The cameras are in your face. You're getting interviewed before the race. You know, it was a different level of. And also, it's dawning on me here that if we don't actually, you know, what happens if there's a technical issue, or what happens? And in typical Gregg fashion, I wake up for the final. We win the heat. I wake up for the final, and my leg is twice the size it should be. I think, we don't know if I'd done too much walking or the heat or what, but you know, the joys of being an amputee, and I still get it every now and again, usually when I've done too much. It just swells. So anyway, that morning, physio, I've got a compression ice machine, pumping ice water onto it to shrink it. Lauren, bless her, can't speak to me at this point. She, not through being rude, just through I don't know what to say. You know, like
this is it. We're training for 2 years.
We need him to row, but I need to be compassionate. You know, and I'm the same. I'm like, I don't really care how we do this, but we need to now come in the top 5. You know, so anyway, and talk about being part of a machine again. I'm feeling a bit vulnerable and like, oh, for God's sake, Greg, why is it always you that needs the, you know, and. So anyway, we put this in, ibuprofen, everything we can possibly do to get me in that bloody. We spend, I reckon, 20 minutes, me and the physio. Bless Lauren, she sat behind me in the heat. You know, we're trying to go out to go to the World Championship final, and trying to. It's exactly the same as this.
Right.
And I'm trying to stuff my leg into it. The physios.
Yeah.
We get it in. And I hear that like sound of success where it like locates. Okay, we're in.
Right.
Like, forget about the pain. Forget about that. And once it's in the socket, it kind of did dissipate a little bit, and it kind of wasn't as painful.
Yeah. Wasn't trying to force itself out.
Every stroke, I was like, okay, this isn't ideal.
Yeah.
But you know what? Honestly, it was about being cool in the moment and being like, right, okay, at least we're in. We're here.
Yeah.
Realistically, top 5.
Yeah.
We still think we can win the race.
Yeah.
And genuinely think, we've won the heat.
Yeah.
Our biggest competitors are the Chinese boat.
Yeah.
We took care of them pretty comfortably in the heat. Let's give it a go. Let's see where we end up. We can come top 5, right? So we have this chat and we really get ourselves up for it. And we go out into the race, and it was. I honestly think it was more epic than the Paralympic final in terms of racing.
Yeah.
It was just every stroke. It felt like we were side by side with the Chinese guy. It's like he knew. He didn't. Like we were pretty good at like covering. What we didn't want is anybody thinking Gregg's injured. Let's really get at them. Anyway, he was phenomenal, and he was really putting it on, and we're side by side, and it just felt like such a resilience test. It was like every stroke. I was like, a little bit pain, but also like an ability to really get on it and get into a bit of a dogfight. And we won. We won by less than a boat length by
the world goal,
7 seconds. Win the world championships.
Bloody hell.
But it was just a different way of doing it. Up until that point, we'd had perhaps it had maybe come a little bit too easily.
Right. Okay.
In
the World Cup,
we'd smashed it. We were setting world records. And it's just like that was the first test on my return to rowing that actually was like that took everything. And it was also a different way to win.
Right. Okay.
I had to get in a bit of a dogfight where I think if I'd have been a bit more mobile and not as much pain, I could have maybe been a bit more messy. And maybe got away from him a little bit.
Right.
But I had to roll my sleeves up, stare it down.
Yeah. That's character right there, though, Greg. Right? That's character right there.
Yeah.
So then you medal there, and then you kick on to Olympic. And were you aware at that point that this is it now? I'll ever get this?
We jump out of the boat. Straight into my wheelchair. I usually try and walk, but physio's like, just get in, and we, because we don't want anything untoward to happen.
Absolutely.
And I didn't even want to look at the legs. It's a great picture of me and Lauren both in our wheelchairs, just like, and we've got this massive, you're going to Paris sign that they've made for us, and that's it. That's when the dream really became alive for me. Because up until that point, I almost, again, felt like a little bit of an imposter. Are we going? Are we going? And, everybody wants to say, so when you go to the Paralympics, and you have to remind people, if we, but that was cool because we could then say, we're going as the number 1 seed. But
And from that moment, we're hell bent on winning.
Yeah.
Straight away, were you backing up? Because you mentioned several times throughout it, which is inspiring, that you've got that kind of locked in, fixed mindset of achieving, whether that be the commando course, whether it be whatever you've done in life. But from that day,
there was something. You're right, because I think up until that point, I think Lauren was very much already of the mindset of like, I am a winner. I am expected to medal, win.
Exactly.
And I think, what? Not that it was easy, but the expectation on me in my first season.
Yeah.
If I'd have got all bronzes, people would have still said, "Hey, bloody hell, for the first season."
Right,
but actually, to go win every race, every heat, was cool. But also, what I realised very quickly was actually now the expectation. You don't get away with that in your second season, right? Because now all of a sudden you are the world record holder. You are so as much as I still felt quite a novice because I've only been rowing again. I've had the big break from rowing and I'm back, and I've maybe been in about 18 months, and a lot of these guys have been in for 10 years or some serious time. So my technique didn't always look perfect.
Right.
It was dogged. It was aggressive. It was everything it needed to be.
Yeah.
And there's no excuses in the second year. And actually now the second year, a little bit like that day one as a commando.
Yeah.
All you've done this year is open the door to what you really want, which is the Paralympic gold.
Yeah, and that's a leveler, isn't it? We're on at the same start line, the same equipment, with the same objective. And it's irrelevant what you've done prior. This is it now.
100%.
Yeah. And I suppose even that in itself, the nerves and the occasion, did that get to you at all?
There was a moment where it was the first regatta my family had ever come to, just because of schooling. Bless my older brother, he was the only family member I'd had, there. Right. He came out to Serbia, and I wouldn't change it for the world. It was such a special moment to share with him. The morning of the heat, I just see my boys. We're doing our warm ups. What we always do in rowing is what we call a pre-paddle. So you go out very early in the morning, 6:30, You know, get out on the water, blow the cobwebs off, get the physiology going, do some high intensity, you know, not too much, but get yourself ready. Remind yourself why you're there.
Okay.
You know, take in the scenery, you know, have a look at the stand.
Probably set on nerves maybe as well.
Visualize what's it going to be like when that's full, 10,000 people screaming. And listen, they're here for you. They're here for the Paralympic Games, which is unique because I suppose at the World Championships, I was like, I know a lot of these people have come to see the big boys, you know, the Olympic guys. But actually, the Paralympic Games, they're not there. There's 4 races, and they're here to watch those 4 races. It's incredible. And you know, I look over and my boys are just so proud. I'm quite emotional now saying it, but so I can just see it in they're like, my dad is there. And you know, the TV cameras are on, the big screens, you know, got you just on your pre-paddle, you're on the big screen. Right. You know,
pressure's on constantly.
It's mad. It's mad. All the sponsors, you know, wanting to shake your hand and this and that, and also knowing that the other side of this 7-8 minutes could be the gold medal. The putting it to bed. The questions I've always asked myself: could you do it? You know, like, could you? Would you do it? You know, like, I've always backed myself, but what are you going to do in those last 100 meters? If you catch a crab, or which in rowing is a bit of a cardinal sin, and if you get the technique wrong and the blade goes, and you know you disrupt the balance of the boat and you slow it down, or and it's hard when you're fatigued and under pressure, and you know these big questions that I think you can hold it together under all that pressure. Mr. Can't deal with pressure. So there's some big questions. But anyway, it was just phenomenal.
So from the heats through to the finals, how was that?
Heats was classic, Greg, in terms of we were about to go out on the water and a huge storm blew up. So they told us to go back in, no racing. I thought I was going home. I'm like, I am the only guy that could turn up to the heats for the first ever bloody Paralympics and get sent home and not get to do it. But you know, they go, right, we think there's a weather window in an hour. Basically, you're racing. You're going to race. We're going to push you out, but there's no lightning predicted. It's going to be horrible. And at this point, we're worried about my hearing aids because the wind was so strong. And it was all over the place. Sound and me become not easily overwhelmed. At this stage, I didn't become easily overwhelmed, but it was overwhelming. You know, like I was trying my best. So at one point, I'm going to race in a bucket hat because it's the only thing we could find to cover my hearing aids. And then there was just a gap in the weather where we both went, and I was like, forget it. You know, I'm going to risk it. If it gets a bit windy, all we need to do is do well. You know, let's qualify the boat for the final, which we need to come in the top 2 of this heat to guarantee that we're in the final. Anyway, we set off and we are absolutely flying. We set a world record in the heats. You know, the first boat to ever go sub 8 minutes in our category, which is a big deal. And one I didn't think we were ever going to do. Up until that point, we've been so close. I think we did an 8.00.9. And I thought it was going to be the thing that I have always lived with. That one more stroke and you know,
like that.
But anyway, we knock out a 7:56, so we've absolutely obliterated the world record. My family are going mad. Lauren's family is going mad. You know, everyone's like, Jesus. This is fast, and we're rowing really well, which is great. And then you have 3 days to sit around and wait for the final then.
And how'd that go? What was that day like? What was it like in the morning waking up to that of thinking, this is it now, something it's kind of like,
it was mad because
defining who you are.
I think I wasn't 110% I was going to retire. I genuinely wasn't. I was 99%, but there was that 1%. There was still that little devil of like, and I think maybe I was keeping the door open slightly because I was like, what if you don't win? If you don't win, I think you'll be back. And I think I possibly would have been because I'm like, I knew that the goal and I knew that the potential was that we could win this thing. You know, we were the world record holders, for God's sake. We're the quickest boat here. We should be winning this thing. But there's no gimmies in sport. And that's why I love sport. We go into the final. Laura's still laughs now about the morning. It's like, I'm usually quite chatty, but not saying a word. I'm just like, but my coach says, look like I was going to kill someone. I've got my sunglasses on, just like, because I'm just like, get me through today. I'm trying to enjoy it, and I'm trying to, but you know, it starts off the same. I'm like, family, you know, there, like waving. A couple of old mates from school and stuff have made the journey, and I'm like, no way, like this is mad. But then I like catching myself, being like, whoa, like don't get overwhelmed. We've got so much time after this. Win it, and you've got the rest of your life. You're retired, you know. So we go down to the start line, and it's just that realization, and it was probably the only moment that I had a conscious, wrestle with just controlling myself, because it was that feeling of 7-8 minutes of your life.
Yeah.
You know, this is it. You know, like
absolutely.
things can go wrong.
Yeah,
you know, like is your equipment right? You know, and I'm starting to, can I just check this? And I'm like, I've never checked it before. You know, don't get me wrong, I check it when I get in the boat, but I'm not fiddling.
Just checking it 4
and
times.
Probably fiddling is like, as you know from your military days, you know, fiddling is probably not the thing to do. You know, trust the equipment.
Yeah.
You know that you're right. Know that it's been oiled. Know that you've prepared it properly. I know I prepared this boat properly.
Yeah.
Now you got to trust it. Sure. And you know what? Get on with it. So, you know, drop your shoulders a little bit. But also, you've beat everyone here before. Yeah. All you've got to do is go out and be strong. And look, the reality being that the weather wasn't quite as kind in the final. Right. It was very similar to the final of the World Championships, which played into the hands of China a little bit.
Right.
But also, you've beat them in those conditions with a bad leg.
Okay.
So, you know, trying to find some confidence in that. Like, well, listen, if you can do it like that. Yeah. And, before I knew it, the hoot is going, and that's it, you know. And it's a weird feeling. Yeah. You're like, my God, this is it. You're
just in that moment.
It took me 100 meters just to probably settle into it. It was just rare, because normally I think once I've committed, it probably took me 100 meters to settle into it, because I think I was just a bit like, wow, this is it. This is the one you can't fuck up. I could feel myself breathing out, just going, whoa, stop the noise, you know, like just row. And we got halfway through the race, me feeling like that, feeling pretty good. Felt like I was rowing well. Speed wasn't particularly great, but we were into a headwind, so being confident in that, you know, like being skillful in that, you know, not burning myself out, trying to find a speed that's probably not there. But the Chinese are rowing incredibly well, and I can see out the corner of my eye that they've got at least a boat length on us, and I'm like, right, okay, probably. The plan was probably it's a 2,000 meter race, right? The plan was probably them to lead up until about 12:50, and then business time, see you later, win, cigar, thank you. So we get to 12:50, we put a push on, and I'm like, here we go, this is it. And nowhere to be seen, and I'm like, okay, so they've still probably got a boat length on us. You know, 1,500 comes, and I'm like, here we go, you know, this is the big call up, you know, Lauren's give me the big G up, and I'm like, oh, here we go, put a push on, and they've matched us, to be fair, you know, and I'm like, at time's running out. We're at the grandstand at this point. You know, so the crowd is going ballistic, because it must have looked so exciting. To be in the boat, you know, like all I'm thinking is, this is what you visualized. This is exactly your fear and your mad. You know, when I've lived there on the mat stretching before a race, or even when I've been back in the UK and thinking, what will it be like to be in the final? It's always been two boats having a real dogged race, and I don't know if that, you know, did I preempt it, you know, in terms of like almost create it in some ways,
Murphy's Law.
But anyway, I am in that exact situation that I've always feared of. This is really hard now, because every stroke counts, but I also need to go really quickly, so I've got to take a risk, and that's a hard, you know, it's like Afghanistan, right? You know, when I think back to that situation and go, why did you take a risk? But we had to. It's a control risk. Everything's a control risk. But, you know, and that was Paris. It was about, how do we take that control risk? And it was such a weird feeling. It was like, I could feel the negativity come in. I could feel the fatigue come in. I heard Lauren call it up one more time. She's like, Greg, it's like, it's now or never. You know, and that just exhilarated me. And she's like, she always says, said it at the Worlds as well. It became our thing for the boys, because she's got a little boy as well. Oh, cool. For the boys. And that was it. It was just like, I've got to be confident. I've got to row now. I've just got to go with it. I'd rather lose giving it 110%. I can live with that. What I can't live with is coming second and being like, you didn't unleash everything there. But we just flew. And people talk about flow state, and I'm aware that might sound cheesy, but it's the first time I've ever felt it in terms of like the rowing, in terms of just being uber confident in we were going to move it, and we were going to move it quickly. You know, like she called it up 1 minute to go, 1 minute to win, 1 minute to become Paralympic
At that point, were you closing in?
It was the most. That's what I mean about the flow state. It was like I was so aware. And even out of the corner of my eye, I saw the tip of their boat for the first time, and I could picture the entire boat without looking. If that makes sense. I could picture him looking tired, and I'm rowing. If you watch it back, you can see me smile, because I'm like, I've got you. And I'm feeling every stroke. I'm feeling bigger, stronger, faster. And it was just amazing, you know. And I got over the line, and we'd done them by like a full boat length then. which was pretty incredible turnaround to see.
Yeah.
250 meters to go, we were still in second place.
Right.
We've absolutely, dominated that last 250. And achieved the dream.
Yeah.
Which was just such a weird feeling.
Yeah. It must have been a similar feeling, Greg, or maybe in a way to achieving something like the Commando course when you completed that, and maybe the release you had then was the feeling that you've still got that.
Yeah.
That you've still got that. You can achieve something great. You can have this huge challenge, the perceived challenge that in many cases people just simply would not pass. To have that achievement then must have been a realization that Greg's still there, like the old you's still there. Yes, it's different in whatever way that may be, but you can achieve something that's just remarkable. That's led on then since as well to an MBE. Was that by surprise?
Yeah, and they're the things you don't think of, right? Well, I never
Absolutely.
did, never dared to think of myself in that ilk, but all the reasons why you get put forward, incredible, and you read about yourself and you go, I do all that, and that's the nice feeling of thinking, some of the kids I've met since who have got disabilities and are inspired, see a work ethic or an opportunity, to go and do something. It doesn't have to be the Paralympics. It could be work. It could be anything, whatever makes them happy. But I'm like, if you've taken anything away from me, I'm cool with that. I'm happy with that. And I suppose that's the nice thing about the reward of the MBE, the award, of the MBE. But very surreal.
Been to collect it? Have you been down to collect it?
Yeah.
So who did you meet?
Yeah, the King.
Wow. Okay.
Buckingham Palace. So again, took the boys and my wife. And, to say I was the lad who was, politely agreed to disagree with opportunities at college. It felt very strange.
But again, you talk about those Monday evenings driving down to Reading and those Saturday nights of driving back and having one day with your family for 2 years. No. That discipline, Greg, must have been incredible. It's a famous Mike Tyson quote, isn't it? Of discipline is doing the things you hate to do, but doing it like you love it. And that's a fascinating 100%. Thing, isn't it? Because although you wouldn't hate the element of rowing or training, but there'd be parts of it thinking I'm just aching constantly or drained, I'm tired, my family are at home. So
I'd say that on the way down. So what an opportunity! And I genuinely bought into it as well, and I genuinely mean it. I do a little bit of mentoring with British rowing now for some of the younger athletes coming through, and I start every session with how lucky are we. Yeah. How lucky am I that I'm stood here now in the centre of excellence with people like you that are committed, and I genuinely mean it.
Yeah.
Like this is nuts, It'd be like, in rowing terms, getting to speak to the England, football team or rugby team, it's a big deal. But I'm like, how cool? It can be. I can be driving down there sometimes, 4 hours, but I'm like, whoa! But how cool is this opportunity? It doesn't come to everyone, and this is unique. Yeah. And it's such a nice reframe.
Definitely. And what's next for you, Greg?
Busy with my PhD.
Okay.
I'm really looking.
So who are you doing that with?
Manchester Met.
Oh, brilliant.
And I'm looking at health inequalities.
Yeah.
I think inspired by my dad's journey.
Yeah.
But also, with a disability, I've experienced some inequalities. I definitely see that in some of the roles I've had in the NHS. So I thought I'd put some method to my madness.
Yeah. So how long's that? 3-4 years?
Yeah, I'm about 18 months in now.
Oh,
so 18 months left. Yeah,
right. Intense?
Yeah. It's intense. Yeah. Listen, like all these things, it started off and you're putting together the scene. What am I going to study and how am I going to study it? So it's pretty low intensity stuff, and then all of a sudden it's ramped up. And
okay.
Yeah.
Serious,
resorting back to keeping me well, making sure I was spending time with the family, not getting too lost in it.
And Greg, before we finish, we ask the same question to everyone who comes on. If you were to rewind back to your younger self and give yourself some advice in terms of character that's kind of carried through to where you are in life now, what advice would you pass on?
Be authentic. I think one thing I was incredibly proud of in all that came with the achievements, the Commando course, all this, is people. I cottoned on to the fact that be proud of who you are. It's who you are, right? Play the hand that you dealt.
Yeah.
And I mean that with, it's so easy, and I did it as a young person to try and fit in. Yeah. To not say what I'm really thinking, or to I was quite tall, and I used to get told off all the time by my grandma, bless her.
Yeah.
Not for standing up straight.
Yeah.
And then, do you know what? My height became my biggest attribute.
Okay.
In success in sport.
Yeah.
And I sometimes reflect on that and I go, wow, as a young man, if you'd have, and when I reflect on the rugby, if I'd have just been a bit more aware of, how important and how precious that attribute was, but I was so not ashamed, that's the wrong word. I wasn't ashamed of it, but I was sometimes embarrassed by it, or
Right,
I didn't
okay.
know, I don't want to stand out.
A bit hung up on it.
Yeah, a bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, and there's something about that, being authentic in ourselves.
Yeah.
Play your attributes.
Yeah.
We've all got attributes.
Yeah.
And they might be obscure, they might be different.
Yeah.
That is your unique selling point.
Yeah.
Absolutely, dig into it.
Yeah.
So many people told me, I'm not the picture perfect, Paralympian that's going to be on the front page of a sports magazine.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Because what do? I say it as it is. I'm
a gold medal.
I'm an ordinary in the rowing world. I was 39 years old when I won it. I was coming at it at a much later stage. They're all really interesting things for other people to be inspired by.
Absolutely.
And I took a lot from that, and a lot of learning from that, because sometimes I did feel like the odd one out, or the crazy guy that's got a family who's involved in a sport.
Right. Yeah.
But actually, as a young person, I would have done much better if I'd have been comfortable, in who I am. And I know that's hard.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard for all of us.
Absolutely.
But yeah, just trust that you can be, exceptional in your own skin.
Definitely. And where can people find out more about you, Greg? You're on social media?
Yeah. Instagram. I like Instagram. That's probably my favourite outlet.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not a big believer in X or. But Instagram. I think it's Gregg.Stevenson. 2 G's in Greg. But yeah, I put ramblings on there.
Cool.
Yeah, a lot of. I've just started a page, Frontline Performance, which is looking at a lot of the techniques I've found useful: box breathing, cold water, a lot around performance, a lot around mental health. So
that's helpful for anyone, isn't it?
Yeah, anyone. Open. There's no charge to that, just little nuggets, and we're hoping to get a few athletes to share what they do as well.
Brilliant. Well, Greg, thanks so much for coming on. Honestly, it's so and from one sapper to another as well. It's been inspirational. Obviously through Jimmy, our mutual friend, I've heard about you over the years. Watched your race last year, and naturally heard stories over the last decade of people coming and going that have worked with you, certainly at NHS or working with the wounded who've got a good relationship with. But I'm so inspired, mate, and hopefully the viewers and the listeners today, I've no doubt they will be equally as inspired by it and just take a snippet of your mindset and add it into their life. It's truly unbelievable, mate. So thanks so much for coming on, and fingers crossed we'll stay in touch.
Oh, thanks, Dan. Really
Lovely.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
That was our podcast with Gregg Stevenson MBE, a remarkable guest whose story reminds us of the strength of the human spirit. For those that were aware of Gregg's story prior to coming into today's podcast, I really hope it lived up to what you already know, the expectations of what Gregg's story is. For those that are in the military community or know a lot about the military community, Gregg's really held in high regard purely because of not just what he went through in terms of the physical and mental challenges, but what he's since done to work with the veteran community, working with the likes of Walking with the Wounded, and naturally the NHS as well. It is absolutely fascinating. So I hope you really enjoyed today. Gregg was his engaging and candid self, and I really hope you got something from it as well. I think Gregg's story, or the synopsis of his life in terms of having a goal and being hell-bent on achieving it, is nothing short of inspiring. So hopefully you're as inspired as I was, and do a bit more research into Gregg and his story as well. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to share it, subscribe to the Character Podcast, and leave us a review. But until next time, thanks for listening.